This is the four all food animal production should be free range slash pasture raised. This is Animals and Society, Section 8. Today's December 1st, 2025. This is Group 4, and in Group 4 we have Kamilla Gonzalez, Daniel Guadarrama, Mariana Bergmann-Dela Cruz, and Jonathan Vega.
For most of agriculture history, livestock animals such as pigs, sheep, cattle, and poultry were outdoor raised and had constant access to open land. Nearly all livestock systems were essentially free range since the farms relied on the open pastures, their lands being grazed on, and mixed crop livestock farms to feed their animals. However, between the 1930s and 1970s, a major shift happened when there began to be major advancements in technology, which was shifting animal agriculture. There began to be confinement systems, which expanded fairly quickly since producers wanted to meet growing demands for their products. For example, pigs began being housed in indoor barns with controlled feeding systems. Cattle were being finished in feedlots, and chickens were moved into batter cages. This was known as CAFO, which is Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation, which is an industrial farm that confines animals for their meat, eggs, or milk. This is also known as factory farms. In the late 20th century, public concern for animal welfare began growing due to concerns for confinement stress, loss of natural behaviors in livestock, and manure pollution. Today and day, free range and pasture raised production systems are still expanding due to the rising demand for nutritionally distinctive and ethically sourced animal products.
Now, for the discussion of ethical aspects involved in animal use, for the first bullet point, we have better animal welfare, or as another example, can be better living conditions. Animals tend to have plenty of open space, fresh air, and sunlight instead of being packed into tight barns with limited movement. With more room to move around, animals can stay cleaner, more comfortable throughout the day. Although health problems that usually come from overcrowding, such as sores, injuries from bumping into each other, or heat stress from poor ventilation, are reduced. And from an ethical standpoint, producers have a responsibility to make sure that animals are raised in humane and making sure there are safe environments where their basic comfort is taken seriously. For the second bullet point, we have supports natural behavior, which tends that animals in open or well-managed systems can express the natural behaviors they were meant to use, such as grazing, pecking, scratching, exploring their surroundings, or herding with others. Being able to behave naturally helps lower stress levels and supports healthier growth and development. Providing this type of environment shows the respect for the animal's natural instincts, which is a key ethical part of treating livestock properly and responsibly. For our third bullet point, we have more environmentally responsible, which pasture grazing and well-managed outdoor systems can help improve soil fertility, supports plant and wildlife diversity, and prevent waste from piling up in one place. Instead of manure building up in crowded barns or feedlots, it naturally spreads and absorbs into the soil, which is helping the land stay healthy. And ethically responsible animal production also means taking care of the environment, protecting the land, water, and other natural resources so they remain available and sustainable for future generations. Sorry. And for our last bullet point here, we have builds consumers trust slash confident in knowing how it's raised, which, today many consumers prefer buying their products from farms that treat their animals humanely. And they often look for labels like free range or pasture raised or humanely certified. These systems are typically easier for producers to monitor, document, and to be more transparent about. When farms are open about how their animals are raised, it strengthens public trust and builds an ethical relationship between producers and buyers. People feel more confident about supporting farms that prioritizes animal.
Culturally and sociological importance. Philosophical literature indicates that modern ethical thought increasingly recognizes obligations to farmed animals as legitimate moral claims, reframing human animal relationships around moral responsibility rather than utility alone. This shift positions free range and pasture based systems as a culturally rooted response to the moral concerns raised by industrial confinement. Across many ethical frameworks, including utilitarian, rights based, and virtue ethics, free range production is no longer seen as merely a consumer preference, but as a moral imperative grounded in the duty to reduce suffering and respect animal well being. Research on pasture fed systems shows that they improve soil health, support biodiversity, and allow animals to engage in species typical behaviors such as grazing and social interaction. Outcomes that reflect cultural values of environmental stewardship and humane care. Mandating free range or pasture based production while also requiring pasteurization reflects a balanced societal approach that integrates ethical duties to animals, environmental responsibilities, and public health protection, while outdoor systems enhance welfare and sustainability. They can introduce pathogen risks, making universal pasteurization and strict biosecurity essential safeguards for consumer safety. Philosophers further argue that modern industrial societies, having created large scale systems of animal dependence, carry a heightened moral obligation to improve farmed animal lives, making pasture based systems culturally and ethically significant. Certified definitions of free range increase transparency and consumer trust, while providing measurable welfare and environmental benefits that align with growing public demands for sustainability. Together, these measures illustrate how contemporary food systems seek to harmonize animal welfare, environmental ethics, and population health through socially responsible governance.
Now, for current events that are related to the topic of kind of what we're going on in this presentation, is for the first bullet point, I have developments supporting pasture raised slash free range standards. Which my first one right here is kind of explaining that in 2025, the company Pasture Bird convinced the USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service to adopt a stricter and more accurate definition of pasture raised for poultry. Under the new rule, birds labeled as pasture raised must spend most of their lives on real pasture with living vegetation, not just dirt lots or tiny outdoor porches. This finally separates pasture raised from the old free range label, which could mean birds only had minimal outdoor access. This update helps consumers identify products that truly come from pasture-based farms and reduces confusing or misleading labels. It can strengthen more trust and support farms that actually follow higher welfare practices. For our second bullet point, we have economic evidence that consumers are willing to pay more for animal welfare friendly products, which a 2025 European study using supermarket data found that foods with higher animal welfare scores consistently sold at higher prices. On average, each 1 point increase in welfare rating was linked to about a 16.4% jump in price, and dairy and eggs showed up even higher premiums of about 25.3%. This means many shoppers are willing to spend extra for products produced under better, more humane conditions, which often includes free-range or pasture-raised systems. These findings challenge the idea that higher welfare farming is too expensive, showing that there is a real market demand supporting these systems. And for our last bullet point, we have here significant rise in cage-free egg production in the U.S. By June 2025, about 45.7% of all egg-laying hens in the U.S. were no longer kept in cages, the highest percentage ever recorded. That's nearly 131 million hens living in cage-free systems, and many of these farms are moving towards pasture access or larger barn systems. Animal welfare groups sees this as a major improvement because these environments allow hens to move, stretch, explore, and behave more naturally. This shift shows that large farming industries can make significant welfare improvements when demand and policies push in that direction. It also signals strong momentum towards free range and pasture based productions across the country.
All food animal production should be free range or pasture raised because with these systems, we will be prioritizing animal welfare, environmental health, and we will be gaining the trust of our consumers. Having livestock be free range will allow activities such as grazing and socializing with other animals, and they will be able to express their natural behaviors, which have been a big concern. This will reduce stress from the animals and will align with the animal agriculture humane standards since there has been a lot of public concern with confinement systems. By allowing our animals to be free range, it can also make our ecosystems healthier since they can distribute manure naturally. Research has shown that pasture raised meats, eggs, and dairy products can contain higher levels of beneficial nutrients, which, by consumer demand, they are wanting more healthier options in natural environments. By having free range and pasture raised facilities, we will be creating a more ethical and transparent food systems that our consumers will be happier with.
This is the informed opinion by Jonathan. So, after conducting our research, we have agreed that we do not believe all animal food production should be free range or pasture raised. While we do agree that free range can lead to more environmental benefits and provide us with meaningful animal welfare, they would also call for a lot more land than most regions can supply for. This can also impact us since a lot of regions already are limited or expensive with how much land we can provide our farmers with. We also believe that all outdoor systems are not always the safest options for all livestock, since they will be more exposed to predators, disease, and weather extremes. With that being said, my group and I do not believe that all animal food production should be free range or pasture raised, since it would not be very effective for all farmers nor livestock. Also, having a free range or pasture raised model could also lead to higher production costs that would be passed on to consumers, making food less affordable for many households. Some species also perform better in controlled environments, whether their health, nutrition, safety can be more closely managed, which means indoor hybrid systems may actually provide better welfare outcomes in certain situations. Additionally, unpredictable climate events such as droughts, heavy rainfall, or extreme temperatures can severely reduce reliability of pasture-based systems, putting both animal well-being and food supply stability at risk. For these reasons, relying solely on free-range production is not realistic or sustainable approach for every agricultural region, and a combination of systems is often necessary to meet the needs of farmers, livestock, and consumers.
And then here are our references and citations that we used in this presentation. Once again, thank you so much. And this presentation was for that animal production should be pasteurized and range free.